Right, let's hear from Anna. Anna is from the Arts Council. Arts Council have recently announced changes to the projects grants programme. And that's, of course, the means by which creatives and organisations can secure short to medium-term funding for their work. So what are the changes? What do they mean for individual creatives and organisations? Why have they been made? What's prompted the changes? What do the Arts Council want to achieve in making those changes? What difference will the changes make? Well, Holly, as I said, is a combined arts relationship manager in Manchester with lots of interest in Cumbria. And Holly, while I get your slides up, perhaps you'd just like to introduce yourself if I've missed anything out, and then we can get going. Over to you.
Thank you. I'll let, as it's Anna's last meeting, I'll let her do her final I won't leave her out, and then you hear my voice talking through all the slides, which is quite monotonous. So I'll let Anna do the introductions.
Okay, thanks, Holly. So yes, sorry, thanks, Tom. I was just going to yeah, obviously the reason why I'm not doing this presentation today is because I'll be leaving next week. So I haven't, I'm not as up to speed with the new lottery project grants as Holly and the rest of the team are. But just to say that obviously with our moving over to our new strategy to Let's Create, we have revamped the National Lottery project grants. And I think, was it about a year ago that we did a presentation to the group? So
yes, it was. Yeah,
the basics. So the intention today is that Holly's going to just give you an overview of the changes in relation to the new strategy, and then later on, if there was a group of artists that wanted a more focused presentation, Holly or someone else could come back to the group and give that really detailed presentation about applying for a grant. So today's presentation is, which I think is what we think you wanted, was rather an overview of the changes. So Holly's going to go through the presentation, and then we can both answer questions, but hopefully that will be helpful. Thanks. I'll hand over to Holly.
Thanks. Next slide, please, Tom. That's great. Okay, so Let's Create is built around 3 outcomes and 4 investment principles. And we're measuring ourselves against these to make sure that we achieve the aims set out in Let's Create. The 3 outcomes are creative people, cultural communities, and creative and cultural country. If you decide to apply for project grants in the future, we'll ask you to tell us how your project relates to at least one of these 3 outcomes. The 4 investment principles are inclusivity and relevance, ambition and quality, dynamism, and environmental responsibility. Depending on how much you'll apply for, your project grants application might talk about one or more of the investment principles. But going forwards, we'd like all applications to think about inclusivity and relevance. And you can find out more about the outcomes investment principles on our website and in the guidance. I'll talk about them a little bit more in the presentation a bit further down, but they do go into the how-to guidance is full. It's a massive piece of guidance, and there's a lot to read through, but I think they've done it in a way, you know, so that there's less kind of questions, and actually it covers everything, so it's worth having a look at that. Next slide, please. So one of the biggest changes to project grants is the fact that the under 15k threshold has risen to 30k. So instead of an under £15,000 application, you'd apply for an under £30,000 application. And the change is that it will take 8 weeks rather than 6 weeks for that unders to go through. And then there's a 30,000 to 100k, which will take 12 weeks. Another change is that we no longer have national activities strand, though that's for those that are applying for that a little bit more. 30 to 100k decisions we've made either in area, depending on where you apply from, and we now have a £30,000 and over touring strand with no upper threshold limit, and this has an EOI process attached to it. Otherwise, projects over 100k will be either nationally significant, area applications, or place partnership applications. Next slide, please. So time-limited priorities. as well as those 3 strands, we now also have a formal process in place which enables us to encourage applications relating to specific areas of focus. We now call these time-limited priorities. Time-limited priorities through project grants allow us to respond quickly to areas of need in the sector, and they're always agreed by EB, essentially. So, for example, one of these at the minute, one of the current funds is the Grassroots Music Fund, which some of you will know of already. It's just the process is slightly changed on Grantium. So you'll still apply through the project grants main programme, but there'll just be a drop-down menu and you tell us if you're applying for one of these time-limited priorities. There's another one at the minute as well, which I think is the DCMS volunteering programme. That's also classed as a time-limited priority. So there's just that slight change in terms of process, but there is information sheets for all of these on the website. So of course they're worth looking at. They're specifically for those that apply to that fund. Okay, next slide, please. So in terms of the application form and criteria, the form is set out into 4 sections with 3 criteria, which are highlighted there in green. And the criteria relates to our strategy, which you'll need to respond to. So from the top, there's essential information. This isn't a criteria, but it's the section where we'll ask you for some basic details about you and your project. And then 3 criteria are feasibility and risk, outcomes, and investment principles. Next slide, please. So the investment principles are an important part of the strategy, and we encourage you to use them to strengthen the planning and delivery of a project. In this section, you can use investment principles to build up an in-depth picture of your project, which will give us a stronger understanding of your intentions and plans and of how your project will contribute to delivering Let's Create. Each text box is about 2,000 characters. All applications must now respond to inclusivity and relevance. We'd like to know how your project will involve and relate to the people or communities that you'd like to work with. Touring applications must respond to the environmental responsibility investment principle. And if an application is more than 100K, it will need to respond to all 4 investment principles. Like I say, there's already lots of resources online, particularly it's quite interesting to read the essential reads around each of these, and that will talk through each of the pillars that underpin each of these investment principles. Next slide, please. And the final change to project grants is match funding. As you know, traditionally, prior to COVID, we always asked for 10% match funding, whether that was in cash or in kind support. I think through COVID, things have changed, and we're still going through COVID, essentially, you know. So therefore, they've decided to keep the sort of the fact that you don't need 10% match funding, and it's a case of give it, have it where possible. So essentially, if you aren't able to find match funding, you'll let us know in the application form, and you'll tell us what those extenuating circumstances are for the reasons why you can't source match funding. Otherwise, you know, we still go with the line that if you can get match funding in kind or 10%, it will always strengthen an application. But the fact that they've removed it just gives those applicants that struggle to find match funding that flexibility, and still enables them to apply for project grants. And I think they've realised that through COVID, that new applicants have come forward and have been successful that probably don't have that strength in match funding that other applicants have had in the past. Next slide. That's it. They're the major changes to project grants. There is a lot more detail around the investment principles. Like I say, there's pillars, there's 3 pillars that underpin each investment principle. And there's also elements to each outcome, which are all on the guidance, and they're all on the website. So it is a case that you do have to do a little bit of reading around those. But like I say, I can always come back and deliver a much more detailed and even drier and much more detailed project grants presentation for those that are looking to put an application in.
Thank you, Holly. That was really useful overview, I think, of what's evolved and what's changed. If anybody's got any questions they'd like to put to Holly, then please raise your hand either visually or electronically, and I shall invite you to enter a question. And Kate, just tell us what's going to happen as far as that extra session is concerned.
Well, I will liaise with Holly and we'll fix something up. In the new year, I suggest, Holly, perhaps not on a Friday morning, at another point in the week that suits you, Holly, and suits everybody else. And we'll be in touch about that as soon as we can.
Yeah, great.
Amy.
Yeah, it's maybe not something you can actually answer, but I just wondered, sort of out of interest through COVID, have you found that there's actually been a big change in the number of applications you've received, maybe from the types of organisations? Has it been sort of steady? Has it been just the same, or has it completely changed, like the landscape for sort of funding applications?
I think Anna will probably agree, to be honest, that applications have increased massively, you know, and meetings have been really busy and really competitive. And I think with removing that necessity for match funding, 10% match funding, it has enabled more first-time applicants, other applicants that may struggle to get match funding. It's enabled them to apply. So it has really increased that competitiveness. And we're still seeing that. I think now with now it's been relaunched, we will see probably a little bit of a drop-off initially. But once people get their heads around it, I'm sure they'll be as competitive as ever, to be honest.
And also, I think that unfortunately we don't have any more money. So it means actually that it's a bit, sometimes, to be quite frank, it can be a bit heartbreaking, can't it, Holly? Because we can't fund all these applicants, and it has brought out more people. But we have got the developing your creative practice fund as well for artists. So that is another, if people are artists, that's another stream of funding. But I think when Holly does that more intensive session with you, it is really important that when people put in applications, they really focus very well on all the prompts, because it is so competitive and it's so difficult to get the funding, and it's in a way it's more difficult now. So I think that's something to think about.
I've been in 3 under 15k decision meetings, and it's been all the applications, all the projects have just been really strong, to be honest, and it's been so difficult to even provide feedback because they've all been really strong. So it's just been a case of, unfortunately, there's just not enough funds available. But that was in the old project grants, because those are the ones that are still coming through. So we'll just have to see how this goes. And, you know, it really is about the sector determining, you know, what strong looks like. It's about us getting the ideas from you. It's not just about us saying, right, this is the benchmark, this is what good looks like. We've got a standard, you know, we're very open. We want it to be quite an organic process with the way the sector respond to the investment principles particularly. So so that will all come in time, and I think it's important to reiterate, there isn't a pressure, you know, straight away for you to say, right, I need to meet all these investment principles, I need to be strong on all of them. We understand that, I mean, inclusivity and relevance, we'll be quite familiar with that through the creative case anyway, and that's just you know, it's just grown in terms of, you need to think about workforce and audiences and communities as well as artists. But actually with the others, it will be a case of, over the next 3 years, we're just looking for those applications to just get stronger and for artists to respond more to those rather than everybody doing it straight away.
Okay, Kathy, then Rob, then Anne.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, I don't really understand what investment principles are. So it would be good to sort of break those down, because it's sometimes it's the terminology that puts people off.
Yeah.
But also I think it's that thing about you're getting good submissions, and I know quite a lot of people have then retweaked and resubmitted and have been successful maybe the second or third time around. So it's that kind of, it's kind of that ongoing process. So yeah, it's kind of, but it is off-putting for people, but I think if it's a good project, persevere.
Yeah, I think, but also just sometimes we get projects that are resubmitted, and we have provided the amount of feedback that we can, and sometimes that's not taken on board. So we do get projects that are resubmitted 2 or 3 times, and they just never get funded. So it is important that if people do resubmit, that they take on board the comments that were made to do that. And I actually understand what you say, Kathy, because about the investment principles and all the jargon we use, because it is really, really off-putting. And it would be good, I guess, if we had some guidance that made things a bit easier. Just hold on, sorry.
The only thing I can say on that really is that we're also getting our head around the investment principles. They're all quite new to us, so I'm having to do as much reading as the sector to actually understand where that's come from in our 10-year strategy. And so I kind of feel like the RM relationship managers like myself are in the same position as the artists and organisations applying. We are just, it's new to everyone, and we're feeling our way through it. And all I can say at the minute is, and it's what I've done so far, is to just focus on, there are essential reads, they're called essential reads on the website for each of the investment principles, and just to go through them. Just there's one particular one for each of them that just kind of explains it and gives you those 3 pillars that underpin it. And for you then to just start thinking about that in the context of your application and your project. And that's all I can say at the minute, because that's what I'm doing. So yeah, we're all in the same position with this one.
Okay, Holly. Rob.
Just a quick one, really. It's slightly off topic, but I hear time and time again that the Arts Council cannot fund even, good projects. There's so many good projects coming through the door. And I wonder if there's an opportunity for organisations like this and those across the country and individual artists to lobby more and better on the behalf of the sector. I know things are tight at the moment, but it's almost a case of he who shouts loudest gets heard better. So I wonder if there's something that group can do and others can do to support the increased funding, maybe.
Well, we always want our organisations to lobby on behalf of Arts Council and government and funding, and the government always want to hear the good news stories, and that's often why we collect data and things like that. But we are in the times that we are in, and it is a tough time, and sadly so many organisations and artists have suffered terribly, which is why one reason why we're seeing the increase, I guess. And yes, so yes, do lobby, but we are where we are, and it's unlikely there's going to be a lot more money available, sadly, in these times.
Thank you.
Anne.
Hi, Holly and Anna. I've got my questions in 3 parts, really. The first one is about match in kind. So if you can demonstrate you have match in kind, particularly from institutions and so on, rather than cash match, will that strengthen an application as opposed to not including that in the sums, if you like? And the second part of the question is about how will this new process map onto 2 things? One is any priority around emerging artists and people at the start of their career. And the other one is around the priority geographical areas that have been identified recently.
So first part of the question, any match strengthens an application, whether that's in kind or whether it's cash. It all really depends on how much you're coming in for as well, because if you're coming in for 17,000, actually in kind, depending on the project and the partners involved, that might be enough. And it all depends on who else is coming in. There's so many different factors and so many aspects of balancing that we have to do, that it's really difficult to say at that moment what is good enough. All you can do is get the best match possible for your project, and if that is meaningful and it comes through in the application, then that will always be considered. But there's no right or wrong answer for that, unfortunately. You just have to get what you can. And we understand that is the position that artists and organisations are in, hence why we've decided to do this rather than placing the 10% match funding as a criteria.
Okay, thank you.
Second part, Anna, do you want to
What was the second part?
just to remind of the second part.
Sorry, too many questions. It was about how this slightly revised process that you've got for the new set of grants maps. This is for individual artists, not institutions. Would map onto priorities around artists at the beginning of their career, and also how it relates to priority areas that have recently been identified.
I mean, in terms of priority artists, it would, so your project, if it's about making work, if it's about having a specific project, then obviously you would apply for project grants. If you feel that this was about developing your own creative practice, then you would be more eligible, I think. Holly, I think if you disagree, to come in for the developing your creative practice, because that is very much around developing practice. If that's clear, the difference between something that is actually going to develop your career as opposed to you wanting to do a specific project which would come in for project grants.
Developing your creative practice is certainly process over project. It's more about the process of making a step change within your career. In terms of project grants and the changes, what they've removed is that sense that you need to have a really solid track record. So that is to enable new artists, particularly those from diverse backgrounds that don't necessarily have those contacts, that network. They've removed that kind of that reliance internally for ACE making decisions based on, oh wow, they've got a really strong track record and that's all part of the criteria. That's gone. If you have a track record, you'll be able to talk about it, but it doesn't rely on that, and it removes the idea of the same people being funded over and over, and opens it more to new applicants. As well as the 10% match funding being removed, opens it up to a wider pool of people. And I think that's how it's kind of helping new artists come through. Of course, it all depends on how much new artists apply for, but a lot of the time, if it's a first-time applicant, they come in quite low anyway. So actually, it increases the likelihood that they could get funded if they've got a strong project behind them. So I think that's one of the main things. And then also, with Arts Council announcing priority place, that means that those are, and I know where you're based in terms of Copeland, that is a priority place, and that will always be in mind. And I think any artists working, any organisations working in those places, they'll always be on the decision panels, there'll always be a focus on the fact that that's a priority place. So it really opens up the scope for activity to take place in those areas, and hopefully encourages other artists to go and work in those areas as well. So we just have to see where it goes. It's all new. Applications really just coming in. These are all ideas. There is actually going to be a review of project grants in the new year to make sure that all the things we've put in place are actually working, and if they're not, to change things or fiddle around with things slightly, nothing major, but hopefully that will increase the scope of new artists and those organisations in priority places. Does that answer your question?
That's incredibly useful. Thank you so much. And I think just while there are interested people here, I'd like to say that if individual artists are interested in coming to do more work in Copeland, get in touch with me at Florence Arts Centre. We are really keen to hear from you. Thank you, though. That's great.
That's really great. Thank you.
Okay, Holly, just a couple of quick ones and then we're going to move on. One from Nick. Do we have to re-register if we already have a user profile on Grantium?
No, I don't think so. I think you're good
Okay.
to go. You're good to go.
And from Faye, for grants of under £30,000, could the decisions be given in under 8 weeks, or will it take the full 8 weeks to get the outcome?
It's likely to take the full 8 weeks.
Yes, I think it's always best to plan your project for the full 8 weeks. Definitely.
We don't.
bank
We
on
have a
it.
process, so it's unlikely that it would be under.
Okay, great, thank you. Kate, I think you just wanted to have 2 or 3 things to say as well about this.
I had 3 things to say, but I've forgotten the third. You'll be pleased to know.
I'm not good with 3 things in a row. I can only take one at a time.
So the first thing is that there's more we can do as a network to help people understand project grants and developing your creative practice for individual creatives, and we can run perhaps a longer session on both, perhaps at the same time, and compare and contrast. Maybe that would be helpful.
Yeah, I can just chip in there actually. Our regular, very dry and very long project grants presentation does usually include DYCP.
Okay.
And it just depends on what your artists want, really. We can do it separately because there's so much to take in terms of the changes, or we can do it all together, but we'll definitely need a nice long comfort break.
Okay, and we always have to bear in mind that we have both organisations and individual creatives here, so we have to get, make the best use of everybody's time, and we'll think about that. The other thing that we can do, I think, is run a session on the investment principles, because if you're running an NPO like I am, you live and breathe the investment principles, and that's just the way it is. But there, I can share that, and I can also facilitate a discussion, I think, because then, they're not black and white, really. They take discussion in order to understand them. So I think we could organise another session about that as well, and we will.
Yeah, and I think just to re-emphasise, when artists and our organisations do start putting application forms in, it is inclusivity and relevance that is the sort of the priority, and that's the one they must respond to. The others are an organic process of just getting your heads around that and think about where it's relevant for your project. If it's not relevant for your project, then you don't need to include those for the sake of it. We're not asking for quantity. We're really focusing on quality.
Thanks, Holly. That's great. We'll pick all of this up in more detail in due course. We're going to move on for now, but Tom, I'm going to go to Richard, if that's all right.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to let everybody know that, as was mentioned at the start of the session, or just before we kicked off, Anna is actually retiring from the Arts Council at Christmas, and has been a huge advocate for, and has a great passion for Cumbria, its arts and its culture. As she says, she spends an awful lot of time in the county, and often on a bottomman's holiday, attending events and activities with her dog Molly in tow, either willingly or unwillingly. She's worked in classical music, in audience development. She's been a relationship manager for a number of organisations in Cumbria, particularly when I was working at the Brewery Arts Centre. And she's just such a great advocate for the sector. She's supported projects like Lakes Culture, Barra Culture, and as she said, she's attended quite a few of our sessions on Friday mornings. So I think we're going to miss our advocates at the Hive, always being there, pitching on behalf of us. I know Holly is picking up that mantle and will be boring her about arts and culture in Cumbria. But I just, on behalf of all the Arts and Culture Network, just wanted to wish Anna all the very best, every happiness for the future. And there really isn't any excuse now for you to come and attend more events and happenings with Molly in Cumbria. So all the best for the future, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you. Oh, thanks, Richard, for all those kind words. Yeah, I'm going to miss the sector terribly, but as Richard said, yeah, there's many more opportunities for me to be up in Cumbria. I can spend more time and Yeah, maybe doing some volunteering, and you're not going to get rid of me that easily, because it means I've got more time. Sadly, Molly's getting a bit older now, so she's not quite as lively as she was, but she's still okay. But thank you. It's been such a privilege. It's been a real privilege to do this job, and I think working up in Cumbria has been the icing on the cake in many ways. So yeah, I'll miss you all, but thanks for everything, and yeah, hopefully see lots of you over the coming months and years.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Holly. Really interesting stuff. And thank you again, Anna, for everything that you've done. Right, let's move on and let's look at the National Trust and the clever things that it's doing in association with the V&A in London next year. So Kate, over to you.
Yes, I mean, there's not much to add other than to introduce John Moffat, who is General Manager for the South Lakes National Trust area. And he's going to talk to us about where this exhibition has come from and what it's all about. But just to say, John, that you must have had a really tricky few weeks, what with one storm and then another. I hope everybody's all right. How's it going?
They're managing. It's not been a great couple of weeks, I have to say. It's only 6 weeks ago that we were talking about parts of Cumbria being flooded, and some of you will have been areas affected by that. And then at the end of November, we get storms as well. So yeah, I mean, around the country, we've lost thousands of trees. That's the number for us. Some really quite significant ones. We've lost a number of champion trees. And just we've lost an awful lot of sort of 250, 300-year-old oaks and things like that as well. So from a nature biodiversity point of view, it's not been great.
No, it's really sad. And I don't wish to dismiss all of that. And I really hope that, you know, the team are coping okay. But let's move on to something much more positive, and that is your partnership with the V&A. So please do take us through your presentation.
Thank you very much. It's quite nice not to be talking about trees falling down or Plan B plans. So yes, next slide, please, Tom. We'll crack straight into it. So some of you will know quite a lot about National Trust, some of you perhaps less so. So I'll just very quickly to set the scene of why we're working with the V&A down in London, just a little bit about the Trust in Cumbria. So most of what we own is actually within the National Park, Lake District National Park. We do have some areas in wider Cumbria as well, though. And most of what we own is by definition then also within the English Lake District World Heritage Site, designated particularly for the cultural landscape. We own about 20%, 22% of the national park, so we're a really significant player. And that land it's about 20% of everything the National Trust owns as well. So inevitably, the majority of that is countryside land and agricultural land. And we've got some really key outdoor cultural attractions, such as Air Force and Tarn House. But the reality is people still tend to think about culture being indoors. So we've got 9 what we call pay for entry attractions. You can see them on the screen there. 4 of them are registered museums, 1 of them floats on Coniston Water. And we operate through 4 what we call operation management portfolios, geographic portfolios, where we've divided the lakes. And we've got the support of our own internal national consultancy, and then various other teams that support the work we're doing at the local level as well. So next slide, please, Tom. And in terms of where we're at now, like all of you, like all organisations, we're still dealing with COVID. And obviously after the announcement a couple of nights ago, we're back to dealing with COVID and responding to that again. So we went through a major, what we called a reset programme last year, which was all around financial savings. That included a big redundancy programme, but also cuts in our project spend and our ongoing needs spend. But we are very much now moving from what we've called recovery, which is where we've been for all of last year and most of this, into renewal and starting to grow again. The last year and a half, our focus has been on the outdoor sites, keeping them open, making sure they're accessible, making sure that people can enjoy them, can really get to them safely, have everything open, have places looked after. But this year we've managed to reopen all bar 1 of our indoor sites. That was Acorn Bank up near Penrith. But none of them, not one of those sites is back to where we were pre-COVID. So that's the ongoing challenge we've got with our indoor places. And I'm sure, like again, like many of you, we've had the ongoing challenge of recruiting staff to work at our places as well. So we're now starting to think about growing again. Our places, what they have on offer there, the opening times for 2022, looking to rebuild our programming, both what we do ourselves and what we do with external partners. If any external partners are interested, then there might be opportunities with us. And that's across the board. So particularly our indoor cultural sites. So if we move on to the next slide, please. One of the partners we're looking to work with is the V&A. So I thought, just to sort of set the scene as to why are we taking Mrs. Tiggywinkle to the big smoke, as it was advertised for you. So several years ago, we had new people arrive in our central exec team, a guy called John Ornstein, who some of you may know from previous roles. And John's brought a new approach to our cultural offer. Some of you will be aware we quite regularly take a pounding in the press about things that we're doing or not doing, or stories we are telling or stories we're not telling. But there's been a new approach to our offer, part of which is what we're calling our treasure houses. And these are our most significant sites around the country, 28 sites around the country, with genuinely internationally significant collections. And internally, we've looked at the places we've got, and we've got these 28 sites, and each of these sites is having a property-based curator at those places. And the ambition is a genuine world-class cultural offer. And at the moment, I don't think we have that at any of those 28 sites. So we know we've got some way to go. John has also come and said, look, we have possibly the biggest collection of objects in the country. Huge numbers of those are internationally significant, but we simply haven't got the places where we can show them at our own places. We want more people to be able to see more of what we've got and engage with what we've got. And the only way we're going to be able to do that is by working with new and existing external partners who effectively will host exhibitions at their sites. So a real desire to get more of our objects on show, but also to be able to take those objects to where the people are. Rather than in the case of the places I look after, Hilltop, people having to come all the way up to the Lake District, which is a pretty expensive place to get to. It's a pretty expensive place to stay and get around and things as well. So actually, by definition, we're limiting what people can do. And the first new strategic partner was the V&A Museum down in London. And at the national level, conversations began only 2018. And the goal was to have the first of the new partnerships running in 2021, in this year. So the V&A were effectively given pretty much the totality of what the National Trust owns. So they could have had Chippendale furniture or silver or old master paintings or whatever they wanted. And the one they wanted was Beatrix Potter. So next slide, please. So Beatrix Potter, drawn to nature, that's become the theme of the exhibition. And we started the detailed conversations in late 2018. We had an MOU signed that's led us to a full loan agreement. And it's really been a genuine collaboration partnership. So we've appointed a full-time project curator onto the project who works with the curator from the V&A as well. We're absolutely looking about the two-way benefits. So, what's the V&A going to get from it? Well, they're hoping they're going to get several 100,000 people going to see it and spending lots of money there. For us, it's around the presence and awareness of our collections. Obviously, an important thing for the V&A was access to promote to National Trust membership, for example. So ourselves and the V&A are the two biggest contributors in terms of numbers of objects to the exhibition, but we've also got others involved, and I know Faye is on the call from the Armic Museum. We've got Tatum involved, several institutions in the USA as well. So for us, we've got an awful lot of learning to take away from this. This is what the V&A do time after time. They've just opened an exhibition on Fabergé. If anybody's down in London, it looks absolutely amazing. It's not what we do. So we have really learned a lot from this first one, which will feed into future partnerships and future organisation, future National Trust places working with the V&A to make it better for them. It was going really well up to March 2020. And then, like everybody, we had to pause. The project was paused. It was then postponed, but it kept live from both the National Trust point of view and the V&A. It was one of our priority projects. So I'm really pleased that it kept going again. The initial decision was quite quickly, it would have to move into 2022, which is fine, but we were able to restart back end of last year to get it going again. It has meant it's been quite tight. We've been playing catch up pretty much all year, but it's happening. We're on track with things. So if we go on to the next slide. So drawn to nature is the theme, and what I've put there is sort of the phrase that we've used. Why are we doing it in the first place? What do we want this to be? So it's absolutely about exploring her whole life and all of her achievements. It's not just about Peter Rabbit and Mrs. Tiggywinkle and Jeremy Fisher and the 23 Tales. Some of you will know more about Beatrix. She was an amazing woman. So we really, really want to tell the whole of her story, from that Victorian upper class London upbringing to being a Herdwick prize-winning sheep farmer in the Lake District, via being artist, storyteller, scientist, entrepreneur, etc., etc. So it's a really comprehensive and wide-ranging exhibition of Beatrix and her life. There's hundreds of objects on display. We're just waiting for confirmation. We think it's the biggest one that's ever been done, but I'm not saying that 100%, but we're trying to get confirmation of that one. And as I said, with the V&A and ourselves contributing, well, between us, several hundred objects between us, all about that increased awareness of Beatrix. And then for us particularly, it's not just about Hilltop, which you can see on the top right there, the picture there. It's absolutely about wanting to promote the lakes as a whole. So some of you were involved a few years ago in 2016. We had our anniversary, 150th anniversary of Beatrix Potter's birth. And it was really good at spreading and getting people to see different parts of the lake. So getting them up to the North Lakes around Derwent and Catbells, getting over to the West Lakes, actually, one of the farms that Beatrix owned. There's an inevitability that Hilltop was the first place. It's probably the best known place, but very much using Beatrix and Hilltop as the hook into the Lake District, and not just our sites in the Lake District as well. So the Armit, the World of Beatrix, Potter and Bowness, places like that as well. And particularly around growing support for the National Trust, whether that be people visiting us next year or 23 or 24, joining us, donating, volunteering, and we've got plenty of volunteer opportunities if you're looking for things. But really about growing support in the wider sense for National Trust. And it will end with an exhibition. The exhibition will end with an invitation to the lakes. So some of you know Terry Abrahams, filmmaker, has done some wonderful countryside films. He's doing the film that will finish the exhibition off, and it will be a wonderful landscape film that draws people to the lakes, and then finishes with this invitation for people to come, initially digitally, but hopefully physically in the future as well. It's been extended twice, so it starts 12th of February, which is starter half term. That should say 22, sorry. And it will run to early January 23. I've still got my dates mixed up, but it's just under 12 months happening now for it. So it's been extended. The V&A, obviously, like us, have gone through a significant program of cuts, so it makes sense to simply extend something that's really big. And if we move on to the last slide, there we are. Tickets went live on Wednesday. The first feedback we've had is they are selling very, very well. So if you've got trips down to London planned and you want to go to the V&A, you can click through the link and get your tickets from there. It's going to be amazing. As I said earlier, this is what the V&A do. They've got the right people, the right technology, the right contractors and people they work with. It's going to be absolutely fantastic exhibition running for next year. So I'll stop there because I've got a couple of minutes left, so I managed to keep within time.
Thank you, John. That was really, really, it's so exciting, isn't it? And so I started my career with the National Trust. My first job out of university was looking after Winston Churchill's collection. at Chartwell in Kent, and I spent so much time underground, literally underground, with that collection. And I love the idea that this is all about getting National Trust collections out and on display accessibly for people. It's so exciting, and I hope lots of people will get down there to see it. Thanks ever so much for making time to come and speak to us, John.
Quite right.
John, Emma's just asking, are there any plans to tour it out beyond of London, perhaps beyond 2023, V&A in Dundee, for example?
They're not planning domestically. They are looking at an international tour. That, like everything else, has shrunk and changed. But the plan at the moment will be an international tour from spring 23 through to spring 24. Probably North America, but venues and things all still to be confirmed at the moment.
Okay, and quickly, Gaffy, you got a question there, I think?
Yeah, I just was wondering what it means for the collection after that and how it comes back to Cumbria, the things that you do have, and will that change how they're presented, do you think?
Yes, so the reality is some of those objects will not be seen for a few years, so that they'll go back into storage along with the rest of our Beatrix Potter collection. We still have hundreds of other objects. So actually the Beatrix Potter Gallery, some of you will know in Hawkshead, every year we have a different exhibition from the Beatrix Potter collection that we own. So some of the objects will go straight back into Hilltop. We've got some of the furniture from Hilltop, some of the artwork, particularly the most sensitive watercolors, they'll go back into storage, and it will probably be a decade or so before they start coming back out for future exhibitions.
Okay, and John, Danielle's just asking again, how long is the exhibition on for? Can you just remind us of the dates again? Yeah,
so 12th of February next year it opens, February half term, runs through to early January 2023. Our understanding is at the moment the V&A are still doing 5-day weeks, but what we've been told is from 1st of April they'll be going back to 7 days a week opening.
Smashing, thank you very much indeed. That's lovely. Well, what a lovely ambitious plan that is. And great way to, as you say, talk about Cumbria and the Lake District to a bigger audience as if they need it, to come and visit us once they've seen the glories of the exhibition at the V&A. So thank you very much, John, for coming along and telling us about that, and good luck with it, and good luck with all the other National Trust related stuff that's busy at the moment.
Pleasure, thank you.
Right, Kate, it's 26 minutes past 10. I want to squeeze a bit of John Hegley in it if I possibly can, but I think you have a couple of messages, as they say, for us first of all.
Yeah, parish notices. One in particular, just a reminder that we have our audience insights session on Tuesday morning next week. Amy's just put the booking link there in the chat. So we've worked with the audience agency for this unique look at audiences across Cumbria and Lancaster. All the NPOs are working together and have provided data to give a sort of really new picture and understanding of what audiences are like post-COVID. So it applies to anybody who works in community or audience involvement, engagement in any way. So please do sign up. We've had an excellent response. There are loads of people booked on, but you know, the sky's the limit. It's on Zoom and you are very welcome indeed. It's free. So please do sign up. Tom, back to you then.
All right, okay, so that's what this is about, this network. It's about trying to create opportunities for people to learn stuff, share stuff, and find out about stuff, and hopefully that's what we've done a bit more of this morning. Okay, so next week, the 14th of December, will be our final Friday call before Christmas. We'll take a well-deserved break, and we invite you to make your window as festive as you'd like it to be as you appear. And also, along the sustainability theme, if you'd like to show us something that you have made as far as a decorative Christmas is concerned, it could be a little decoration, it could be an enormous decoration, or anything else, then we'd love to see it. And you can hold it up to the camera and we can all coo with admiration for your creativity. So next week, please, if you want to bring something that you've made, but if you want to look festive, if you don't look festive, that's fine too, but I suspect one or two will be looking festive. We will have a special guest next week. I can't reveal who that's going to be. And also we have commissioned a special big busting cultural quiz of Cumbria that's going to take place as well. So a quiz is being built especially for the occasion. So we invite you to come along and try and answer some questions for the Christmas quiz. The Cumbria Arts and Culture Network Christmas Quiz 2021 will be taking place next Friday as well. So hopefully that'll be a joyous experience for us all, and we can share mince pies and sherry at the same time at 9:30 on Friday morning. So that's next week, and then we'll be taking a break until January after that. But I'm just going to leave you with, at 10:28, 2 minutes of glorious culture, and I invite you to enjoy this. This is John Hegley, a fantastic stand-up performance poet who I saw last night in Carlisle. He was on top form, and this is a poem that he performed last night called I Am Guillemot. And I shall share my screen and enjoy John Hegley talking to us about guillemots.
I am a guillemot, I use my bill a lot. I get the fish out of the wet, I eat my fill a lot. I live on ledges, vertical edges, eating ones that do not know what veg is. Don't you give me sherbet, give me a turbot. My appetite for fish I cannot curb it. I am a guillemot, I know the drill a lot. I drill into the drink and get the drink and not the ink upon my quill a lot. Say you do not thrill a lot. Well listen humans, very soon you will a lot. Did you know that I can go so deep I've been seen from the porthole of a submerged submarine 130 metres under? I don't think so, miss it and blink so. I come in hard and I'm able to sink so. I am a guillemot. I sleep rough, I've got no stuff. But what I am will always be enough for me. Just because you're homeless doesn't mean you're gormless. I can go so quick it's almost like I'm formless. I am a guillemot. I do my specky recce from my rocky windowsill a lot. I am a diver, ocean arriver. I don't do nesting when I am resting. I can sleep while I am standing on one leg, and so it doesn't roll off when I stretch my wings or stroll off. I've got an egg that is conical and eccentrically weighted, so it don't fall off the edge of the cliff face into the water with all the jellyfish and all the other fish. I am a guillemot. I find the fishes tend to lose 1-0 a lot, but I'll take only what I need. I'm not a greedy bird. I am sustainable, self-restrainable. I am a guillemot, am I not?
The genius that is John Hegley. I hope that's put a smile on your face this Friday morning. Think guillemots, think great things. Have a lovely weekend, everybody. Thank you to John and to Holly and to Anna and to Richard for his very kind words as well this morning, and for all your questions and deliberations in chat. I will see you again in a festive way next Friday morning. Have a lovely weekend, everybody.